You ever walk into your own house and just feel something? Like the air's holding its breath. Like the walls are listening. Like something's happened, but the moment hasn't told you yet. I wasn't even supposed to be home that night. My weekend trip got cut short, roadwork delays, a canceled event, life just doing its thing. So I came home early. No big deal. Just a few hours ahead of schedule. I pulled into the driveway like I had 1,000 times before. Same old porch light flickering like always. Same welcome mat with the frayed edges. But something felt off. Subtle, but undeniable. It was too quiet. Not peaceful quiet, unnerving quiet. The kind of quiet where you instinctively hold your breath and listen. I stepped inside and closed the door gently behind me. No TV. No laughter. No signs of life. Just this strange calm that made my heart start beating a little harder for reasons I couldn't explain yet. I took a few steps in. Dropped my keys in the little dish by the door like always. Hung up my coat. And that's when I noticed it. A faint trail of music floating down from upstairs. Low. Sensual. Something rhythmic and soft. Not the kind of music my husband listens to. Not even close. And then the smell. A cologne I didn't recognize. Warm. Spiced. New. Definitely not my husband's cheap aftershave he's sworn by for 15 years. I paused at the base of the stairs. My instincts were screaming, but my body? It just kept moving. Like some part of me already knew. Like I was walking toward a moment that had been waiting for me. Whether I was ready or not, each step was slower than the last. The music got clearer. There was a soft thump movement maybe. Whispers. Muffled laughter. I reached the top of the stairs. My heart was pounding in my throat now. The door to the guest room was cracked open just enough to see a sliver of light. It should have been empty. But it wasn't. And then I saw them. Two bodies, tangled up in the sheets. Skin against skin. Breathless, unaware, completely consumed by each other. My first thought? Shock. My second? Confusion. And then recognition. One of them turned just enough for me to see his face. And my entire world shifted. It was my stepson. My 22-year-old stepson. And he wasn't alone. I stood frozen in the doorway. Not angry. Not screaming. Not even crying. Just still. Because in that moment, I realized something I'd been too tired, too lonely, too numb to admit. You think you know the people under your roof. Until you don't. Call to action. If you've ever found yourself in a moment you couldn't forget even if you wanted to, you're not alone. Subscribe to Sheila Heart Tales for more raw, real, emotionally charged stories that dare to go there. Because sometimes the story you never expected is the one that changes everything. I stood there watching him in that bed and I couldn't unsee it. But the thing that haunted me most, it wasn't just what he did. It was the quiet truth rising in my chest. This didn't start tonight. Not really. It started weeks ago. In the kind of ordinary moments you don't notice until they rearrange everything inside you. I remember the first time it caught me off guard. We were in the kitchen, just me and him. Late afternoon sun pouring in through the window, casting these long golden streaks across the countertops. I was chopping vegetables, nothing special. He came up behind me to grab a glass from the cabinet. He brushed past me, barely a touch. But his hand grazed the small of my back. Soft, intentional, or maybe accidental. But it lingered. Just a second too long. And in that tiny second, something in my breath caught. Like my body noticed something before my mind could explain it. I didn't say anything, neither did he. But the energy between us changed. And once it changed, there was no unfeeling it. After that, he started spending more time around me. Not in an obvious way. Just close. When I cooked dinner, he'd wander in with a lazy kind of charm. "I'll help," he'd say, already rolling up his sleeves. He wasn't clumsy or loud. He moved with quiet confidence like he belonged there. And every time our arms brushed at the counter, every time our fingers accidentally touched reaching for the same spoon, There was this stillness that followed, a silence that filled the room, thick and charged. He didn't pull away, and neither did I. It wasn't flirting. Not really. It was something slower, quieter. Like a slow-burning fire neither of us acknowledged, but both of us felt. One evening, I dropped a slice of tomato onto the floor. I bent to pick it up, and when I stood back up, he was right behind me. Closer than I expected. Closer than he needed to be. His breath was near my shoulder. And without thinking, I turned my head. Our faces were inches apart. And still we said nothing. But his eyes searched mine, not with lust. With something gentler. More dangerous. Recognition. And that scared me. Because I saw myself in that look. I saw the woman I used to be. Before the exhaustion. Before the emotional distance. Before the quiet years of feeling invisible. In him, I saw someone who saw me, not as a stepmother. Not as his father's wife. But as a woman. That night, when I went to bed, I could still feel where his hand had rested on my hip. Barely a touch. But the skin there remembered. The next few days, I tried to create distance. Tried to be cold. Formal. But it didn't last. Because the more I tried to ignore it, the more it grew. We moved around each other like magnets drawn together, then snapping apart before we crossed the line. But that line, it got thinner every day. One evening, the power went out. A summer storm rolled in fast, and we were the only ones home. I lit candles, made a joke about how eerie it felt. He laughed, and we sat at the table playing cards by candlelight. And I remember looking at his hands, how steady they were. How much they looked like a man's hands now, not a boy's. When did that happen? When did he change? Or maybe it was me who changed. Maybe I was just starting to notice. He caught me staring. Didn't say a word, just held my gaze. And for a moment I didn't look away. That night, lying in bed in the dark, I realized I wasn't afraid of the line being crossed. I was afraid of how badly I wanted it to be. Because deep down, in the quiet parts of myself I kept locked away, there was a truth I couldn't deny. Something was waking up inside me. Something that hadn't stirred in years. And it had everything to do with him. It was just past midnight when it happened. The house was still, so still you could hear the wind playing in the trees. There was no storm, no power outage. Just silence. That kind that wraps around you like a blanket too heavy to shake off. I couldn't sleep. I'd been tossing in bed, my husband snoring lightly beside me, turned away as always. We hadn't touched in weeks. Not even the accidental brushes that used to mean something. It had all turned into routine. Quiet dinners, separate screens, separate worlds. I slipped out of bed, wrapped a cardigan around me, and padded barefoot out to the back porch. Didn't turn on the light. Didn't need to. The moon was bright, casting everything in this soft, silvery blue. And the night felt honest somehow. Like if anything was going to be said, it would be under that sky. I wasn't out there long before I heard the screen door creak behind me. And there he was, my stepson, moving quietly, barefoot too. Like he felt the silence, just like I did. He didn't say anything at first. Just sat beside me, not too close, not too far. We both looked out into the yard. Crickets. Trees rustling. Nothing else. But the silence between us? It was loud. I could feel his presence like heat off a flame. And I knew something had been building for too long to ignore. And then he said it. Soft. Low. Like he was talking more to the night than to me. You're different when he's not around. I turned my head to look at him. Not defensive. Not confused. Just stunned. No one had ever noticed that. Not even me, maybe? You noticed that? I asked. He didn't even hesitate. I notice everything about you. And there it was. No mask. No filter. Just the truth, dropped between us like a spark. I looked at him fully then. There was no smirk. No arrogance. Just those eyes steady, warm, seeing me. Not the version I gave to the world. Not the mom figure or the dutiful wife. Me. And that was somehow more intimate than any touch could have been. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, staring out again. I see how alone you feel, he said. You're always holding your breath. Like you're bracing for something that never comes. That cracked something open in me. Because he was right. I'd been holding my breath for years. Waiting for my husband to come back to me emotionally. Waiting for him to notice when I smiled less. Waiting for intimacy that never came. So I did what I hadn't done in a long time. I spoke. I used to love him so much, I whispered. It wasn't always like this. But somewhere along the way, it turned into cohabiting. Like we're just surviving under the same roof. I swallowed. My voice felt shaky, but I didn't stop. I can't remember the last time he asked me what I needed. Emotionally, physically. Sometimes I wonder if he even sees me anymore, or just this routine he's used to coming home to. There was a long pause. I didn't expect anything in return. I wasn't even talking for him, I was finally talking for me. But then he said, quietly, "That's not okay." I looked at him again, eyes full. He added, "You deserve more than that. You always have." I don't know why, but those words undid me. Maybe it was the way he said them with conviction, not pity. Maybe it was the fact that he was the first person in a long time who looked at me like I mattered. I stared at him, searching his face for some kind of explanation. This was my stepson. This was supposed to be simple. But it wasn't. Because right then, under the moonlight, I realized something terrifying. The thing that had been missing from my marriage. The attention, the presence, the seeing. Was sitting right next to me. And he wasn't just offering it. He had been giving it, quietly, for weeks. And I'd been receiving it even when I tried not to. That night didn't end in a kiss. No one crossed a line. But something shifted. The dam inside me cracked just enough for the truth to pour in. This wasn't about lust. It wasn't even about rebellion. It was about recognition. And once someone sees you that deeply, you don't go back to being invisible. Not ever again. I didn't bring up that night for a while. The one where I came home early. And found them. I hadn't planned to. I didn't even know how. What do you say? Hey, remember when I walked in on you with someone and felt like the floor disappeared? But the image wouldn't leave me. Not because it was shocking. But because of the way he looked at me when I opened that door. Not panicked. Not ashamed. Just still. Like he was waiting to see what I would do. And I did nothing. I stood there. And then I left. But he knew I saw. And a few nights later, on that same porch beneath that same aching moonlight, he finally spoke. He sat beside me again. Closer this time. And his voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. You weren't supposed to see that night. I turned to him, my heart pounding. Then he added quietly, but clearly. But I wanted you to. Everything stopped. The air. My breath. Time. I stared at him, not sure I heard right. Not sure I wanted to. He looked straight ahead. Not smug. Not daring. Just honest. I needed you to see. Because I needed to know if you felt it too. I couldn't speak. He continued, carefully choosing his words like they mattered. Because they did. You've been living half alive in that house, pretending like it's enough. But I've seen the way you hesitate before you speak. How your smile doesn't quite reach your eyes. I swallowed hard. My mouth was dry. He wasn't wrong. He shifted slightly toward me, his voice a little lower now. That night, it wasn't random. It wasn't just about pleasure. It was about clarity. I finally found my voice, barely above a whisper. The girl, who was she? He nodded slowly, as if he'd expected the question. Her name is Ava. We're close. But not in the way you think. I blinked. Confused. He explained. She's someone I trust. Someone who understands this connection, what it means to feel seen by someone who's off limits. She helped me stage that night. She knew why. She supported it. Because she respects you. She knows it wasn't really about her. I just stared. It was a risk, he said gently. A big one. But I had to know if you'd look at me the same after. If your eyes would stay on me longer than they should. if your breath would hitch when we were alone again. I needed confirmation that I wasn't imagining all of this. He turned then fully toward me. His knees brushed mine, warm even through the fabric of my pajama pants. And I saw it, he whispered. In your eyes. The way you looked at me. You didn't just catch me. You felt it. I didn't deny it. Because I couldn't. That night had unraveled something inside me I'd kept wound too tight for too long. The shock hadn't come from seeing him with someone else. It came from realizing that I had become the thing he wanted to be caught by. He didn't just risk judgment or consequence. He risked me. My silence. My rage. My rejection. Because he'd seen something in my quiet sadness that made him believe I might be just as starved. Just as desperate to be wanted. It was insane. It was bold. And yet it was the most honest thing anyone had done for me in years. I sat there, trembling, my pulse loud in my ears. The world tilted. The lines blurred. And the truth sat between us like something holy and dangerous. He didn't try to kiss me. He didn't need to. Because I was already changed. And deep down, I think he knew. Once a woman is seen that clearly, there's no pretending she can't see him too. After that night on the porch, I didn't sleep. Not really. I lay there in my bed beside a man who hadn't touched me in weeks, months, if I'm honest. He snored softly, his back to me like always. And I stared at the ceiling with eyes wide open, heart racing. Because my mind wouldn't stop playing that moment on repeat. Not just the moment I saw him with her, but the moment he looked at me. That stillness in his eyes. Like I was the storm. Like I was the reason his world tilted. And that terrified me. Because I didn't look away. Even after I knew what I was seeing, who I was seeing, I didn't turn and leave. Not right away. I froze. And something inside me opened. And I hated myself for it. I kept whispering in my head. What kind of woman even thinks this way? What kind of woman watches her stepson in the dark and feels anything but horror? I tried to push it down. Tried to busy myself with chores, with noise. But the quiet always found me. And in the quiet, that ache crept back in. Not just desire. No, it was deeper than that. It was a craving to feel again. To be chosen. To be seen. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror for days. My reflection felt unfamiliar. Like it belonged to someone else. Someone dangerous. I avoided him. If he entered the kitchen, I left. If I heard him in the hallway, I ducked into a room. He didn't chase me. He didn't corner me. He just waited. Patient. Still. Like he knew the storm had to pass through me before I could face it. And the guilt, it didn't come from him. It came from me. From the fact that I didn't hate him, that I didn't feel violated. If anything, I felt understood. Like someone had finally cracked open the shell I'd been hiding in for years. My husband never noticed the way I'd stopped laughing. Stopped reaching for him. Stopped trying. But he did, and that hurt more than anything. Because I didn't ask for this. I didn't go looking for it. And yet now, here I was, feeling like I was standing at the edge of something I couldn't unsee. What if I stepped forward? What if I liked it too much? What if it changed me and I couldn't go back? Those questions haunted me. For days. Until one morning, I found myself standing in the doorway of the living room. He was there, book in hand, curled on the couch. Calm. Still. And I broke the silence. I didn't plan what to say. I just let it out. I don't know what this makes me. My voice cracked. He looked up slowly. His eyes were gentle, steady. And after a beat, he said, "It makes you honest." Just like that. Not dramatic. Not romantic. Just real. And something in me shattered. Because I'd spent years pretending. Pretending I was fine. Pretending I didn't need more. Pretending I was okay with being touched like a task and loved like a chore. But he had seen past all of it, and instead of judging me, he offered me truth. It wasn't permission. It wasn't pressure. It was an invitation to be real with myself. And for the first time in a long time, I said nothing. I just stood there, letting myself feel the gravity of what was unfolding. letting the fear and the curiosity and the ache swirl into one impossible storm. I didn't know what came next, but I knew this. Something inside me had woken up, and it wasn't going back to sleep. Something shifted after that day in the living room. After he said those words, "It makes you honest." I didn't have a clever reply. I didn't have answers. But I had clarity, or at least the start of it. For the first time in years, I gave myself permission to feel what I was feeling. Not analyze it. Not label it. Just feel it. And it wasn't just desire. It was deeper than that. It was this slow-burning, soul-deep ache to be seen. To be chosen with intention. To be looked at like I wasn't just a part of the furniture in my own life. And you know what? I was tired. Tired of waiting for someone else to decide I mattered. So I stopped resisting. Not in some dramatic way. There was no grand confession, no cinematic kiss. It was quieter than that. More human. I started by knocking on his door. Not barging in. Not seducing. Just knocking. He opened it slowly. That familiar stillness in his eyes, but something softer, too. Like he'd been waiting not for my body, but for my choice. I stepped inside and sat on the edge of his bed, and I told him the truth. This wasn't just your story anymore. It's mine too. And the silence that followed felt heavier than any touch ever could. I told him I wasn't here to play out someone else's fantasy. I wasn't here to be watched, or teased, or tested. If this was going to happen, whatever this even was, it had to be real. No secrets. No shame. No games. I didn't want to be the ghost in the hallway anymore. The silent woman cleaning dishes, waiting to be noticed. I wanted to be felt. Held. Understood. And most of all, I wanted to choose, not be chosen. So I laid down my terms. I told him I wasn't a girl chasing danger. I wasn't someone looking for revenge on a husband who barely looked up from his phone. I was a woman who had finally remembered what it felt like to want something. To want someone. And I wasn't going to feel guilty about that anymore. If we were going to go there, if this connection, this pull between us was going to mean anything, it had to be more than heat in the dark. It had to have light. He listened. Didn't interrupt. Didn't try to seduce or soften me. He just nodded once. And then he said, "Tell me what you need." Not what he wanted. Not what he imagined I wanted. But what I needed. That was the moment I knew the power had shifted. Not just in the room, but in me. I wasn't floating anymore. I had my feet on the ground, bare, firm, and ready. This wasn't some wild affair spiraling out of control. This was a woman waking up and taking her life back one honest breath at a time. It started with a message. Simple. Direct. Be home by 8 tonight. No questions. Just trust me. I stared at it for longer than I needed to, not because I didn't understand it, but because of how it made me feel. My hands were trembling, and not out of fear. It was the not knowing, the surrender. The invitation into something I didn't have to plan or fix or anticipate. Just receive. I paced for a while, looked at the clock, walked past the mirror without looking, then doubled back. I opened the drawer where I kept the pieces of me I hadn't worn in years. Not lingerie, not costumes. Just elegance. A silk wrap dress. Soft, charcoal gray with just enough sheen to catch the light. It wasn't flashy, but it fit like it was made for the woman I was becoming. I tied it slowly, paused at the waist, ran my fingers down the fabric, and took a deep breath. No perfume, just a touch of oil at the base of my neck, vanilla and amber. Warm, private, like a secret only I was allowed to know. As the clock neared 8, I felt time slow. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Then I noticed the details. Soft light spilling from the hallway like candlelight, though no candles in sight. Music playing, low, steady. Something jazzy but stripped down. Pure. And then I smelled it. Sandalwood. Not like cologne, more like someone had lit a piece of memory on fire and let it curl through the air. It was his doing, I knew that. He had been here. He had touched this moment before I even arrived. And somehow it felt like a gift. like the space had been shaped for me. At exactly 8:03, the knock came. Not rushed, not timid, just present. I opened the door and there she was. Her. The woman from that night. The one tangled in shadows and sheets. The one I'd tried so hard not to replay in my head and failed every single time. She stood there, framed in gold hallway light, wearing black. Minimal makeup. Hair down. Like she hadn't dressed for me, but wasn't surprised to see me either. She smiled. Not big. Not forced. Just knowing. Like she already understood things I hadn't said out loud yet. And I remember thinking, how did we even get here? But I didn't say it, because she stepped inside, gently brushing past me like we'd done this before. Her scent mixed with the sandalwood in the air. Feminine, grounded, a little spicy like cinnamon and earth. She didn't ask for permission. But she didn't take space that wasn't given. She just belonged. And somehow, that made me feel more seen than I had in years. I watched her walk into my living room, settle in like it was sacred. She didn't speak. Neither did I. There was too much language in the moment already. In the breath. In the awareness. In the anticipation of something that hadn't yet begun, but already felt like everything. My pulse was racing, but my feet were steady. And when she finally turned to face me, she said just one thing. You don't have to know what comes next. You just have to want it. It didn't start with fireworks. It started with stillness. That kind of stillness where everything feels thick in the air. Weighted. Electric. She didn't sit too close at first. She let the space between us breathe. She poured wine without asking my preference like she already knew. And she was right. Dry red. Smooth. Warm on the tongue. Heavy on the chest. We sat in silence. Not awkward. Not calculated. Just open. The music played softly from the other room, something piano-driven. No lyrics. Just tones that pulled at you gently, like fingertips down your spine. We clinked glasses not as a toast, but as a grounding. And then he appeared. Him. He didn't walk in like he owned the room. He walked in like he'd prepared it. His steps were quiet, measured. His eyes found mine immediately, not hers. Not the glass. Not the floor. Me. There was this pause. Like he was waiting for a sign. Not to start, but to enter. To belong. And I gave it without words. Just a soft nod. And something in my chest cracked open. He approached slowly. Deliberately. No rush. No hunger. Just reverence. He kissed my cheek first. Not my lips. Not my neck. Just the place between where it was both intimate and safe. And I remember thinking, this isn't about lust. This isn't about breaking rules. This is about being seen. His hand came to rest on the curve of my waist. Light. Tentative. Waiting. I leaned into it barely but enough. And his breath caught. I heard it. And that made my breath catch, too. He didn't go further. He didn't press. Instead, he sat beside me. Close enough to feel the heat radiate between us, but far enough that I could reclaim space if I needed it. That's what struck me the most. The care. Every move felt like a question. Every glance like a soft, is this okay? And every time, I had the choice to say yes or not. She watched from across the room. Not intruding. Not competing. Just witnessing. Her eyes were soft. Receptive. Curious but never demanding. And as our conversation wandered from music to memory to small flashes of vulnerability, I felt something shift. Not in them. In me. I started leaning in. Not just physically. Emotionally. Energetically. I laughed a little more freely. Tilted my head when he spoke. Let my fingers rest lightly over his for just a second too long. And she noticed. Without a word, she came closer. Not between us. Not interrupting. Just joining. Like a quiet harmony added to a melody already in motion. She reached out, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear. Slowly. Tenderly. Her fingers were soft, cool from the glass, warm from the moment. I didn't flinch, didn't question. I just breathed. And in that breath, I felt this strange, unexpected safety. This surrender that wasn't about losing control, but finally having some. Because every moment moved at my pace. Every glance, every inch of space closed between us, was dictated by me. I was in the center. Not in a spotlight, but like the sun around which everything else gently turned. When her hand touched my knee, it didn't feel invasive. It felt like recognition. And when he leaned forward, his lips barely grazing my shoulder, it felt like worship. They weren't here to take anything from me. They were here to pour something into me. To refill the parts that had gone hollow from neglect, silence, and years of pretending I didn't still burn beneath the surface. His voice came low, near my ear. You don't have to do anything you don't want. I turned to face him, eyes level, breath steady. I know. And then, finally I let go of the edge I'd been clinging to. Let the moment carry me. I leaned back against the couch, allowing their presence to surround me. No pressure. No choreography. Just attention. Intention. Her hand found mine. His hand stayed at my side. And together, they waited for me. Everything moved slow. Everything had purpose. And for the first time in what felt like years, I felt chosen. Not because I was someone's wife. Not because I was beautiful. Not because I was convenient. But because I was me. And that was enough. It didn't come in a wave. It came in layers. First, the quiet. That thick, humming stillness that tells you something sacred is about to happen. Then the sound of breath, not rushed, not shallow, just shared. His, mine, hers, all moving in rhythm, like we were sinking into something deeper than time. I could feel their presence on either side of me, not surrounding me, not trapping me, just anchoring me. My stepson God, even saying that word now feels strange, like it no longer fits. He looked at me like I was the only truth in the room. Not like I was a forbidden fantasy. Not like I was some reckless mistake. But like I was real. And needed. And seen. His eyes never left mine, even when his fingers touched my wrist, light, respectful, asking. I nodded. Not out of obligation, but from knowing. Knowing I was safe. Knowing I could pull away. Knowing I wouldn't. He moved closer, not in a rush. Not devouring. Just present. His forehead met mine first. And in that tiny point of contact, I felt it. The ache. The longing. The years of feeling like I was in a room full of people but still invisible. Then her hands, one on my shoulder, the other at the nape of my neck, steady, grounding. She didn't try to compete for space. She never once tried to take focus away. She was there to hold whatever I needed to release. And release I did. It started with a breath that turned into a sob I didn't know I'd been holding. Not from pain, but from all the years of silence, from all the times I swallowed what I wanted just to keep the peace. He held my face in his palms, not possessive, not urgent, just reverent. Hey, he whispered, barely a breath. You don't have to be quiet anymore. And that broke me wide open. Because for over a decade I had been quiet. Composed. Careful. I had shrunk myself to fit inside a life that looked good on the outside, but starved me on the inside. And in this moment, in this small, stolen pocket of time, I expanded again. I reached for him not as a mother figure, not as something forbidden, but as a woman. A woman who needed to be held. A woman who needed to be touched not just with hands, but with intention. We moved together, not as people grasping for pleasure, but as people returning to themselves. Every touch was a reclaiming. Every kiss was a rewriting of history. I remember the way his hands explored, slow, cautious at first, like reading a language he already knew but wanted to relearn by heart. He kept looking into my eyes, checking, waiting, asking with each movement if I was still there. Still with him. Still saying yes. And I was. Fully. I didn't flinch. I didn't hide. For once, I didn't feel the need to apologize for being hungry for closeness, for connection, for desire. She joined us gently like a whisper added to a song. She touched my arm, then kissed my shoulder from behind, and somehow that made everything more intimate. Because it wasn't just about him. It wasn't even about me. It was about something shared. Something unspoken, finally given space to breathe. And there, in that room, I was unwrapped not just physically, but emotionally. They didn't tear me open. They unfolded me like something precious. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel like I had to earn love. I just had to receive it. When the moment crested, when everything in me tensed and trembled and finally let go, I didn't cry from shame. I cried from release. Because the weight of 1,000 lonely nights had finally lifted. And in its place? Warmth, stillness, tenderness. His arms around me, her hand in mine. And silence not empty but full. Full of breath. Full of meaning. Full of me finally taking up space. There are moments in life that don't shout. They don't explode with fireworks or crash like storms. Instead, they settle quietly like a soft weight on your chest that makes you breathe differently. Moments that change everything, not because they're loud, but because, in them, you feel seen. Not just glanced at or noticed, but truly seen finally, fully, irrevocably. Have you ever wanted something so quietly, so deeply, that you almost forgot it was yours to want? That part of you, tucked away in the corners of your heart, whispering, aching, but afraid to speak up? Maybe you've pushed it aside, told yourself it wasn't real or not meant for you. But it's there. Always there. This story isn't about scandal or judgment. It's about the raw, messy truth of what it means to be human, lonely, craving connection, desperate to be understood. It's about the unexpected ways we find ourselves, sometimes in places we never thought we'd go. If this story stirred something inside you, whether it was curiosity, pain, hope, or something you can't quite name, you're not alone. None of us are. Subscribe to Sheila Heart Tales for more stories that dive deep, that slow burn with emotion, that speak to the hidden truths we carry. Join this space where we're not afraid to explore the complicated, the taboo, and the intensely real parts of our lives. Because everyone deserves to feel seen, to feel alive, to feel understood. Thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next story.